Today, someone commented on one of my videos, and he wrote, "I don't watch all your videos, but I love your challenging and rarefied opinion. Thank you once again." Well, thank you, Hussein. I really appreciate your comment because it made me think and it prompted me to do some research, and I learned something today, and I love to learn things, so it was really great to read. He wrote, "What you've said through your videos holds so much truth, albeit unconventional. I love reading the news, and every so often there's a new story about a dog that has injured someone. What's mind-boggling is people's persistence in believing dogs have the purest souls on the planet. I call it opinion inertia. Once the positive negative image enforced by society is adopted, people find it hard to think otherwise." We see this opinion inertia at play when it comes to dogs, as well as animal shelters and no-kill policies, which is what we're going to talk about today. We are told by society that killing dogs and cats, I'm going to keep it about dogs though in this video, we're told that it's bad to kill them and that no-kill shelters are good. But opinion inertia is very interesting in itself. I found this study that examines social consensus and tipping points with opinion inertia. It's something you might want to check out. It helps to explain why it's so difficult for people to change their opinions, even when presented with evidence that conflicts with their beliefs. There are socio-psychological costs involved in changing one's opinion, but the study shows that a small minority opinion can tip over the population if its inertia outweighs that of the opposing opinion. Individuals change their opinion only after a certain number of consecutive encounters with the alternative opinion. And that's why I encourage all of you to speak out more. Upload videos if you feel so inclined. Make your opinion known. Be vocal. The more people encounter our opposing opinion when it comes to dogs, the easier it will become for them to change their opinion. But anyway, back to the subject of no-kill shelters. I'm going to discuss some articles that were published by PETA. PETA, if you don't know, stands for People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. It is the largest animal rights organization in the world with more than 6.5 million members and supporters. Now, most people hate PETA for various reasons. PETA believes people should not have pets. It wants to abolish zoos. PETA runs provocative and controversial shock campaigns that involve nudity, for example, and they depict horrific animal cruelty sometimes with images that are very disturbing to a lot of people, and people don't like that. PETA has also been involved in public stunts like throwing buckets of fake blood at people wearing fur coats and stuff. I think the main reason people hate PETA is because it promotes euthanasia. However, if you can look beyond their public stunts and have an open mind, and if you have a genuine desire for the truth, then you'll realize PETA makes some very valid points. It has some very strong arguments against no-kill policies, so I just ask you to keep an open mind. PETA published this article called "The Deadly Consequences of No-Kill Policies." The information in this article is not widely promoted. It's not discussed much, if at all. And we need to shine light on the truth contained within this article. And we need to understand that we're going to face opposition because this information flies in the face of what society is constantly jamming down our throats. You know, this idea that all animals need to be saved at all costs and killing them is bad. Where did this idea originate? Before we get into the PETA articles, in fact, there are more than one that I want to talk to you about today. Let's talk about where this idea originated. We'll come back to PETA a bit later, but let's look at this Aeon article called "The Cruelty of Kindness. No-kill animal shelters have unleashed an epidemic of suffering. Is a life of misery any better than a quick death?" It explains that, quote, "with more and more shelters pressured to keep animals alive regardless of the circumstances, an estimated 10,000 private rescue groups pull animals from high-kill, city-run shelters and transfer them to private, supposedly temporary, no-kill foster homes for a savior rate that the Humane Society estimates to be as high as 90%. It says that no-kill advocates consider the killing of animals to combat overcrowding in shelters offensive and heartless. Is it really, though? The article states, quote, "While we dress our pets in matching pajamas, saving, coddling, and healing them, our ever-growing empathy for the furry has led us off the rails. As consumers, we are complicit in creating an inhumane and dangerous situation that leaves animals in pain, shelter staff overwhelmed, and pet owners burdened with unprecedented levels of financial and emotional stress." End quote. Is living a miserable life and dying a slow, agonizing death really better than a quick, painless death? Now let's look at this PETA article here. No-kill policies slowly killing animals. It says when no-kill animal shelters and rescue groups are filled to capacity, which is almost always, they are left with two options: turn away more animals than they take in, or warehouse animals, often in substandard, filthy, and severely crowded conditions for weeks, months, or even years on end. Most, if not all, of the animals who are turned away from such facilities still face untimely deaths, just not at these facilities. I can tell you that I live a little out of town. I have friends who live out of town, like in remote rural locations, and regularly we see people abandoning their pets on our remote, desolate roads. I've heard stories of people who have tried to abandon or surrender, I should say, their animals at the animal shelter and were denied. They were told, sorry, we can't take your animals. And so what did they do? They just drove the animals into the forest and left them there. Now, this is a death that is way worse than being put down, like they would have been painlessly in a kill shelter, in a shelter that does euthanize animals, but instead they have to go and suffer these horrendous, drawn-out, torturous deaths. The article continues that they are also cruelly killed by people who don't want them, dumped on roadsides. Like I told you, I've seen this firsthand, and left to die from starvation or being hit by a car, or spend their short lives homeless, unwanted, and producing more litters of animals for whom no homes exist. See, they're contributing to the problem by creating even more animals that are going to suffer. It says the lucky ones are taken to well-run, open-admission animal shelters, where they either find a well-screened permanent home or are painlessly euthanized in the arms of professionally trained, compassionate people. And here are some of the no-kill animal shelter failures that made headlines in recent years for making animals suffer a fate far worse than a kind death. Now, I'm going to provide the link in the description for you to read. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. There's just one report after another of these rescue organizations. And by the way, it's extremely easy to set up a rescue organization. I found an article published by Best Friends. It's called How to Start a Rescue or Other Animal Nonprofit. It's very easy to do this. Anyone can do this. Once you obtain 501c3 nonprofit status, you become eligible for grants. You can get funding. So, people are doing this. They're getting money to do this. And, you read these reports and it's just one after another. These animals are kept in deplorable conditions. There's a lot of hoarding going on. Just awful. I encourage you to read through it. I'll put the link in the description. Terrible, terrible torture, cruelty, and suffering happening at these, rescue organizations that are operating under the guise of doing good. It's crazy. And it's not just a handful of cases. There are many each month reported cases of animals being tortured and neglected at these rescue organizations and animal shelters. And these are only the reported cases. Imagine how many more go unreported. And then you also have reports here in this article of people who have been bitten by dogs hours or days after being rescued. I'm going to share this article with you here that I found. It explains how no-kill shelters and rescue organizations have a desire to save every single dog and cat, regardless of their aggression towards people, regardless of the animal's physical and mental health. The safety of those adopting animals becomes less important than an aggressive pet. How is that possible? They are adopting out dangerous dogs with no concern at all for the implications this has on the community, no concern at all for human life and human suffering. The article says some shelters and rescues don't even conduct due diligence. They adopt out stray animals within a few days of being found, without behavioral evaluations, vaccinations, or altering. So they don't even sterilize the animals. This is absolutely insane. And this unethical practice of putting people in harm's way under the guise of doing something good, it needs to stop now. You can find countless stories on the internet of shelter dogs that attacked their owners hours or days after being adopted, quote, adopted. The word adopted only applies to human children, by the way. So after being taken to their new homes, I should say. For example, this Tennessee man was killed by a dog 3 hours after he brought it home from a shelter. This dog that had an aggressive history and bit an 11-year-old in Canada was a rescue dog that was advertised as being great with kids. This Las Vegas man found his wife dead after she was attacked by a dog that they had adopted days earlier. They brought it to their house days earlier. And this recently acquired rescue dog attacked 4 people in Canada last fall. The dog was put down, and the owner, of course, received hateful messages. People even said that she should be euthanized. You always see this when an aggressive dog is put down. It's insane. Dog life is more valuable to people than human life. Crazy. Anyway, countless reports like these. Dogsbite.org has an entire database of shelter and rescue dog attacks. I'll share the link in the description. How did this nightmarish situation come to be? Back when I was younger, it was easy to surrender your pet at the animal shelter. There were high kill rates, and this was not frowned upon. The Aeon article I touched upon earlier talks about a man named Rich Avanzino, who is often referred to as the father of the no-kill movement. He is quoted as saying that we should not kill family members. He compares dogs to humans and said, quote, "When we talk about homeless people, their life is less than perfect, but just because they are homeless, we don't round them up and put them down," end quote. This is where the insanity began, I think. His statements are ridiculous. We don't round up and kill the homeless, that's true. We also don't surgically alter their reproductive organs and sterilize them. We don't take homeless people away from their families. We don't put collars and leashes on homeless people. We don't put them in crates or kennels. We don't put collars on them that squirt citronella in their faces or administer electric shocks when they speak at inconvenient times. We don't celebrate having control over every single aspect of their lives for the entirety of their lives. These are all things we do with dogs, but not with homeless people. I mean, if you want to say killing dogs is wrong because we don't kill homeless people, then we need to look at all of the other things we do to dogs that we don't do to homeless people and say that all those things are wrong as well. Furthermore, if you're going to say that you care about animals or call yourself an animal lover, then it needs to apply not only to dogs and cats, but to all animals, including farm animals and wild animals. These so-called animal lovers suffer from a serious moral schizophrenia because they only extend their compassion to dogs and cats, but not to other animals that are just as sensitive, just as emotional. These people need to call themselves dog lovers or pet lovers. You're not an animal lover. If you're using the argument that it is wrong to kill cats and dogs, which are animals, then it's also wrong to forcibly impregnate and take babies away from cows just so we can steal their milk. It's wrong to castrate bulls and pigs without anesthetic. It's wrong to cut off pigs' tails and ears without anesthetic. It's wrong to cut chicken beaks off without pain relief. It's wrong to kill the 56 billion land animals every year just because we like the taste of their dead bodies. It's also wrong to hunt and fish. We don't do that to humans, so it's wrong, right? See, dogs and cats well, let's keep it about dogs. Dogs are no different from pigs or cows or turkeys or fish or whatever. They all have the same capacity to suffer. There is no logical reason to value the lives of dogs over the lives of any other animals. I happen to think all of those things I mentioned are wrong, except for killing dogs and cats, and I'm going to explain why. It's because I think a life of misery is worse than a quick death. And I think that if you can be healthy and happy without killing an animal, why would you kill it? I think it makes sense to avoid killing where possible. I think we should be leaving all animals alone as much as possible, except for when it comes to self-defense or protecting our territory. In those cases, I think killing is justified. If animals pose no threat to us, I think we should leave them alone. If they do pose a threat to us, like dogs do, dogs in our communities pose a very real threat to us, then we are justified in killing them. Dogs routinely injure and kill humans in unprovoked attacks, with children and the elderly being their preferred targets. They also spread diseases which contribute to the suffering and deaths of tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, or millions of people each year. If animals pose no threat to us, I think we should leave them alone, just as we wish to be left alone and not have an alien species breed us or exploit us or interfere with our lives in any way, as long as we remain on the earth and they remain on their planets. But if we were in their territory, I think they would be justified in managing our population or exterminating us. If we were causing problems in their society, attacking them, I'm talking about aliens here, right? Let's imagine we go to an alien planet, we start attacking them, we're harassing them every day, we're spreading diseases. I think they would be justified in eradicating us. Even if they initially brought us to their planet as some sort of science experiment, if the experiment would go wrong, it would be best to put us out of our misery and, to protect them than to keep us alive in an environment we do not belong in, where we cause others to suffer and where we ourselves are suffering. The domestication of dogs is likewise an experiment that has gone horribly wrong. The experiment has failed. The suffering that this entails, I'm talking about dog domestication, the suffering for both humans and for dogs is so great we can't even process it. It is colossal, it is mind-boggling and incalculable. There's a lot to read in this Aeon article. It talks about PETA as one of the most outspoken opponents of the no-kill movement, and its president, Ingrid Newkirk, is quoted as saying something very, very important that we must keep in the front of our minds at all times. There is a lot of money involved here. I really think this is a major driving force in the no-kill movement, and all the corporate mind control, the advertising and campaigns we see that encourage people to rescue and adopt dogs and cats, it's all about money. The no-kill movement is linked to the meat industry, Ingrid explained, referring to the Center for Consumer Freedom, a right-wing nonprofit that started the website PETAKillsAnimals.org and is supported by major U.S. meat producers such as Cargill and Tyson Foods, as well as the Ringling Brothers Circus and the tobacco and fast food industries. To Newkirk, the hypocrisy behind the Center for Consumer Freedom's attacks is obvious. Tyson and Cargill contribute an enormous amount of meat to the pet food industry. They both also offer their own pet product lines. Never before have Americans owned so many carnivores. The pet industry has tripled in the past 2 decades, and it is estimated that Americans now spend more than $23 billion a year to feed their pets. And I made a video about how the pet industry is actually a $70 billion per year industry in America alone. So we're talking about a huge amount of money here. So getting back to the PETA article about the deadly consequences of no-kill policies, they talk about, there's the analogy of animals floating past you in a river, and you save one and then another, and then you see that the river is full of animals and you realize it's impossible to save them all. So you look up the river to see who's throwing them in. And people are not working to address the source of the problem. They're only focusing on the symptoms of the problem. People hate the idea of animals suffering, which is noble, but they are not looking at the reasons why the animals are suffering. And nor are they considering human suffering caused by dogs. They're all wrapped up in finding dogs homes at all costs. PETA says the source of the problem is the runaway birth rate. It wants to pass laws that will require dogs be sterilized. I think this is a great start, but I think there is a lot more to the problem. The cause of all this suffering is not just a runaway birth rate, it is our cultural attitude towards dogs and cats. I'm keeping this video about dogs, but as a society, we need to change how we view animals, pets in particular. We see dogs as ours to own. People think they are cute and loyal, unconditionally loving, and so forth. We worship them. We think they are better than humans and that we should strive to be more like them. People want to own dogs, bottom line. And this is what needs to change. As long as people want to own dogs, dogs are going to suffer because there is a huge discrepancy between what we are led to believe about dogs and what owning a dog actually entails. Dog ownership is romanticized, and dogs are portrayed as loving family members, great additions to the family. What happens is people get dogs and they realize that dogs are more work, more stress than they bargained for. Dogs are very needy and require more time and effort than people realize. You have to remember how dumb most people are. Even when people put in the work and do their best to train their dogs and manage the dog's behaviors, the dogs still drive them crazy. Sometimes the dogs show aggression. They bite, they bark incessantly, they destroy property. They're annoying. They get sick, and the owners don't have money to cover the vet bills. A lot of people get dogs without realizing how much they actually cost and how much time and work they require. And so they want to get rid of them. And, you can wish for people to be more kind-hearted and have more compassion, but in reality, humans are, they can be pretty rotten, pretty cruel. And I don't know. Is it even cruel to want to get rid of a source of so much stress and something that's making your life miserable? It's not really cruel to want to get rid of that. It's just they don't belong in human society. That's the bottom line. As long as people continue to want to own dogs, and as long as we perpetuate this idea that dogs are great and that we should share our homes with dogs, dogs will continue to be abandoned. This is inevitable. And they will continue to suffer. So even as someone who loves dogs, you should be against dog ownership and you should discourage others from owning dogs. And this is the reason why I have this dog awareness channel. It's not only because I hate dogs, I do hate dogs, but I wish to see less suffering in the world. I'm not a person who wants dogs to suffer. I know a lot of you like to think that, but it's not true. I want to see less suffering, and the only way we can accomplish that is by abolishing pet ownership. And that's all I had to say today. So thanks for watching, guys. Please share this video and give me a like and a subscribe and yada yada. It'd be great. Let's spread awareness. Thank you for all you are doing to spread awareness. And I wish all of you a great day. And remember, the future is dog free.